Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime as always, Vasili, Gianarakos. What's going on, my friend?
I'm doing well, Yariv. We got a lot to talk about in terms of Flyers news and breaking down just the latest Flyers game against Buffalo and the 5-2 loss here. So we'll dive right into that and touch on all things Flyers and other aspects as well.
Yeah, and for those who are, kind of noticing, we didn't release on our usual schedule. Halloween kind of got in the way a little bit of that, but we decided to record after the game. We're both a little bummed out from it. We'll try not to let that affect our attitude during this one. Usually we got a little bit of time in between to reflect a little bit, but we'll get into it and plenty to talk about, even just beyond the game itself. Before we get started, though, I do want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Again, a humongous help to us if you guys do. If you could share it out as well, that's a huge huge help. Please go to Spotify and iTunes, follow us on there. Give us a rating on iTunes if you can. That's also extremely helpful. Again, anything you guys can do like that is extremely helpful. And continue the comments. We definitely read them all. If we haven't had time to respond, we apologize, but we're doing our best here, and we will continue doing that moving forward. So again, thank you all for the support. You guys are awesome. And also a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Remember to get a cheesesteak when they're open, because they're still not open yet, but I will remind you guys. All right, let's get right into it, Vasili. So, the Flyers on a 3-game losing streak, 3 tough losses in a row, games where you really can't say that they were a bad team. It's not like they're getting peppered in their own zone and they're really not achieving much. It's actually kind of the opposite, where all 3 games felt winnable. And I did kind of have a tweet about the Anaheim game of why it was, I thought, their worst game. And obviously the game against Ottawa, let's bring this up first, actually. I'll get this out of the way. Their game against Ottawa was clearly on paper their worst game. But the reason I was so frustrated with that Anaheim game against the Ducks, it was really just their inability to not force the play. Like, they had the game should have been won by them. In my opinion, they were the better team, but they just kind of constantly chose to make the more aggressive play rather than the simple play. And just like we all got angry when Cam York made that move against Vegas in his own zone and kind of, it's not all on him, but he kind of blew it there at the end. Yeah, I felt like the game was kind of full of that with the Anaheim game. So it's not necessarily that it was their worst played game. I just felt it was the most frustrating for me because the game should have been had. Having said that, tonight's game was also very much in that feeling. I mean, we walk away with a loss tonight as well, but what are your thoughts quickly, I guess, on the Anaheim game? We'll just get that out of the way.
Just looking at that one, I mean, I think the Flyers, they don't play their best game in the sense that they have some turnovers that come back to bite them. Just some plays, as you kind of described, where they're forcing something that really isn't there. And obviously the coach is preaching to them, he wants aggression. He wants them to make plays when possible. But I think that's also in the sense that, okay, sure, you want to make plays, but you don't want to make plays when you're going to turn it over and there's actually nothing there for you. Like, he'd rather have you make the simple play than force it into the middle, have a turnover, odd man rush the other way, and you get scored on. I just think a lot of odd man rushes against. I think that's been a theme for the last 3 games and in the last 3 losses, where, the team's trying to be aggressive at certain points. And I think they do need to pick their spots a little bit better of when they're doing that. So for Anaheim, I mean, it's a tough loss. I would say that as well. It's probably the most disappointing of the season. Just when you look at the rest of the
that's the right word. Disappointing.
When you look at the rest of the competition that they've played to this point, right? These teams are projected to perform probably better than Anaheim when you're seeing kind of the performances against Dallas, Vegas, Buffalo, even Ottawa, right, was projected to kind of be a better team than Anaheim. So I think just looking at the way the Flyers played and were playing up to that game, you kind of expected them to maybe go in there and get a win, right? So I think that's probably why there's definitely more disappointment. And I do think there's something to be said for the afternoon games. Like it seems as though that's also a theme early on where, in Ottawa, they're a little bit caught off guard in the afternoon. Seems to be the same case, in Anaheim there. So obviously a tough loss. And then going on to Carolina, I thought they played them really well, despite starting slow. They're hanging with one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, a team that's been projected to be a Stanley Cup contender, has been a Stanley Cup favorite for, the last handful of years. And essentially it's just a similar situation to the Vegas game where they actually outplay Carolina in the third. But one mistake, a Noah Cates giveaway that's very uncharacteristic of him, essentially causes the goal against there. But obviously, it's something that they want to learn from. I mean, they didn't learn in this game particularly. Kind of the same things happening where it's 2-2, and then a backbreaker of a goal kind of flips the period around for them in a situation against Buffalo where they outplayed the Sabres handedly, right? They outshot them 40-15. Obviously, they start off with a very strong first period versus the Flyers, but I'd say from about the maybe 8-minute point of the first and onwards, the Flyers pretty much controlled play up until those two Buffalo goals in the third. I guess we can start getting to the Sabres game in general here, Yariv.
I do want to comment on the Hurricanes game real quick.
Yeah, sure.
And I think what was interesting about that game is very similar to the Vegas game, in the sense that they're playing a premier team. They're coming down to the wire. It's a game that's a tough game. Those losses I don't get angry at. Again, those are really good teams. Carolina played really well. Vegas played really well. So I think it's one of those teams where, they are the better team, on paper. They are slated to win. And I really like the Flyers kind of brought it to them the entire game. So I don't really look at like the Carolina game as a, missed opportunity necessarily. But, it does feel like on this 3-game losing streak here that they probably should have came out with points here. And they didn't come out with points in any of the games where, if you really look at it, the way they played, it does not seem to reflect what the outcome is. And I think that's what was really frustrating overall. But I didn't hate the way they played it against Carolina. I don't have, that game didn't frustrate me when it ended. I went, man, like, damn, we almost had it. Almost like the Vegas game. Like, we almost had it.
Very similar feel. I think Tortorella kind of shares the same sentiments, right? Where he said, you can't really be mad at the team for the effort they put forward. Carolina is one of the best teams in the league. You have to just look at it and learn from it. But I think it is a missed opportunity in terms of the fact that you're a couple minutes away from at least going to overtime, getting a point against one of the best teams, and you kind of let it slip through your fingers on one mistake, right? So
exactly. So let's get into the Carolina game, or I'm sorry, the Buffalo Sabres game, which just ended as we're recording this now. The level of frustration that I think everybody kind of felt this in this game. You could hear the crowd kind of booing at the end. The Flyers go 0 for 3 on the power play where they had some opportunities, but they really just scored early on a kind of fluky Farabee goal, who I will say Farabee has 5 of the team's first goal of the game. So he scored 5 of those this season. So of 10 games, he's the first guy to score. So good, good on Farabee there. It didn't start off great, though. I mean, the Flyers didn't look very good at the beginning of this game. You messaged me immediately. You're like, hey, another kind of slow start, which is something they weren't doing in the beginning. And they did come out slowly today. And, the Flyers did, they could have been down 3-1 at one point in this game. Luckily, the Flyers kind of challenged that one goal that was recalled on an offside, but then shortly afterwards, Carter Hart clearly wasn't 100% at that point. Let a puck go right in front of him, one where he probably should have cleared that puck away from him, wasn't able to get to it, and then they go up 2-1 immediately. That slow start and the injury to Hart, I felt like it was a little bit deflating. I will say, considering Sam Ersson went back in and the Flyers kind of took over the game from there on out, I would say Buffalo easily got outplayed the entire game and was opportunistic, but I don't really think that, Buffalo might feel good about their win, and they should, because they withheld, but they really were saved by their goaltender. They didn't compete very well the rest of the game. They got pretty much outmuscled, outplayed in all facets of the game. But the Flyers just couldn't break through. And even though they tied the game 2-2, I think you pointed out very adequately that, it's those odd man rushes that the Flyers are giving up where they're trying to make that extra play where it's really not necessary. And you're putting yourself in a position, you give a guy like Tage Thompson, the ability, that kind of opportunity one-on-one with the goaltender, he's going to score that about 80% of the time. So it's hard to even blame Ersan, even though, he barely had shots on net. Sometimes that can play against you, obviously, as a goaltender, you would know. But, you put their best player in an opportunity where he's
It's tough.
really not going to miss. And the Flyers did not score on their opportunities. They had tons of opportunities. They outshot the Sabres 40-15.
Yeah, they outshot them 40-15. And it was a slow start, right? It didn't start off in that manner where you saw the Flyers kind of controlling things. Obviously, the Sabres pick up right to begin. And other than Farabee scoring right off the bat, it's really them controlling things in the first 10 minutes here. And they are lucky in the sense that they get the one goal turned back due to the offside. I think personally, like, it's tough because you have Carter Hart get injured. And I think maybe with him in there, it's potentially different outcomes. So obviously, it's hard to know. But that doesn't say that, the game's on Ersan or anything like that. I do think Hart probably should have left when he kind of felt something at first, just in terms of, he stretched out to make that save. And stretched back, actually. And then you can kind of see he probably tweaked something there, tried to play through it. And then on that Bureau goal, he also stretched across to make the save. And that's probably where he really felt it again on the same type of stretch. And you kind of see him get pulled from there. But yeah, I mean, the Flyers, they do respond afterwards, right? Like Cam Atkinson gets a goal. It's a nice play by Sanheim to start the play and rush the puck up ice. Even for Farabee's goal, Sanheim is the one kind of making the exit out of the zone and making the outlet to Farabee there. So he had a monster game just in terms of Flyers defensemen. I thought Sanheim was definitely their best defenseman. He's continuing to look like a top pair defenseman, which is a positive to take out of a loss like this. And then from that point onwards, right, like the Flyers definitely control the play. They in 45 minutes, there was a period where they had 28-9 shots. So that just shows you the level of, scoring chances they were creating. And it's a frustrating loss from the Flyers perspective, I would say, because they have two grade A high danger chances, to even the game back up when it's 3-2 for the Sabres. And then the Sabres go back down the ice and, score a shot. And that's really the backbreaker, I would say, for them. I think with it being 3-2, obviously it's not ideal. With Owen Power kind of sniping one off the post by Ersan there. But I do think with the momentum that they had, if the game stays at 3-2, they probably do find a way to tie it. But then once the Sabres are up by 2 there, it's just, they're not going to be able to beat Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen 2 times just with the way he's playing right now. He was locked in. You can't not give him credit.
He made fantastic.
Yeah, he made a ton of great saves, and he's the hot goalie right now, right? He had a shutout in his last game against Colorado that the Sabres played on the weekend on Sunday. So he's obviously feeling it. He was a big part of the win for the Sabres. One player that I think that I was a little bit disappointed with, just in terms of some little mistakes in the game, was Cam York. There was just a couple of plays where I thought, he could have done a better job of either not forcing the play or just making a safer decision, right? Like on that goal, I believe, it was the Power goal. He tries to pinch it on the boards. It's not really the greatest time to do that, and
That's
the puck gets. Yeah, the puck gets by him, sparks another odd man rush, and the Sabres capitalize. And what it really was, I think, in this game is the Flyers outplay the Sabres for majority of it. They create a ton of high danger chances. They cannot capitalize, and the Sabres did capitalize on essentially all the chances they did create. Like, they only had 15 shots, so they didn't create a lot of chances, but pretty much everyone they did have was in the back of the net. And it had to do with the fact that most of them were odd man rushes. Like, even the Thompson goal, he's one-on-one with the goalie in a situation where you just cannot allow Buffalo's best player to be there. And I think that's another turnover as well for the Flyers by Noah Cates. That's kind of two uncharacteristic turnovers from him
He
in
was
back-to-back
minus two
games.
to he was -2 tonight.
So, I mean, I think from this point, if you're Tortorella and you're the Flyers, you can really look at the process and say, well, we're playing the way we want to play, right? Like, majority of this game, they're not in their defensive zone. They're not defending. They're actually, rushing the puck up ice, quick in transition, getting a lot of shots on net, playing the offensive zone, but they just are having trouble putting the puck in the net right now. And that's pretty much been the story in the last two losses here against Carolina and against Buffalo. Also, the slow starts, as we mentioned, have been a trend. So I think that's something obviously the coach will want to try to turn around here. But from a Flyers perspective, they just have to keep playing in this manner and not get frustrated because
Sure.
obviously if you keep putting up these many shots a game, controlling the puck as much as they have in these games, you're going to win more often than you lose. I think they just need to tighten up on those odd man rushes they're allowing against because those are really burning them. They burned them against Carolina and burned them again here against the Sabres.
Yeah, man, I think that was all really well said. I mean, I will say Noah Cates was 68.8% on the draw tonight. So, it's hard to say that anybody had a bad game, though. Even Cam York was only a -1, and he led all defensemen in ice time today, probably because Sanheim was in the box. Otherwise, Sanheim would have edged him out a little bit. But I don't think anybody had a bad game. Like, the fourth line played really well.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were out there even more than their ice time even indicates. I mean, like Galton only had 11:33 of ice time. He wasn't very good on the draw tonight. He only won 27.3% on the draw, but none of that I would say really hurt the team. It was more that, they just got shut down. Every great opportunity they had was met with a great save.
Yeah.
They kind of flubbed. They kind of flubbed a lot of opportunities. We saw this even the other night where, pucks were just falling off the stick, and that's kind of how the game started. And I just felt like they should have got a lot more tonight overall from several players. I mean, Laughton tonight probably should have had two different goals, and
the 2-0 was tough.
Wasn't able to score. Like again, just the opportunities they had, they should have had more goals than two goals tonight, and they were just shut down persistently over and over and over again. But like you said about Sanheim, it was really good to see Sanheim with 2 assists tonight.
I think he was a standout for me, just in terms of Flyers players. He created a ton of offense. He was activating from the blue line and, carving out defensemen and making some dangles and making plays. Like, he looked like a top pair defenseman tonight. He has for majority of the season, really. I think Farabee, too, is probably my other standout. I think he was the best forward for the Flyers in this one. Cam Atkinson also, he had his chances. I do think, when you look at it and just look at this game in general for the Flyers, it's really just the inability to capitalize on the chances. And I think another thing to mention, and we kind of talked about it before we started, is power play here, right? They're 0 for 3 on the power play.
Yeah.
If they just get one of those, power play chances to actually go in for them here, like in that second period, for example, I mean, it's a whole different game. And they're unable to do that. And it kind of almost acts as a deflator for the team, right? Because it's, in a sense, they've been so bad on this power play for the last couple of years. It's almost like here we go again, right? Like we have another chance and we're kind of letting it slip by. And I wonder how that sets into the mindset. It's obviously not something you want your players to be thinking, but I'm sure it's in the back of their head that, we're just not really efficient right now on the power play.
Yeah, which is weird because they are getting their opportunities, but they're just not able to bury anything. That the power play hasn't looked great. I'm not going to say it's looked great, but it hasn't been as bad or as inefficient as it was last season. In my opinion, I don't think it's a talent issue. Not enough shooting for one, like a lot of perimeter play. If you look at the goals that TK has scored on the power play, I mean, they're all in the slot one-timers, and it just feels like it's not really happening. The mix might still not be there. Like outside of the one game, they really haven't had a lot of success on the power play, and they continue to go with the same mix. And then Joel Farabee, who has 5 goals on the year, isn't even on the power play right now. And, that is kind of a numbers game. But, I look at that and I go, well, he's the one scoring goals and he's not even out there. It's just kind of a weird thing that I'm seeing with the power play where like, I don't see the combinations the way that I like them.
Yeah.
And it's not manifesting on the ice.
And one thing I will say, and I noticed one power play where they have the second unit out there, and I think it's York, Tippett, and Forster at the top of the key there, kind of forming a triangle. And you have York facilitating, but he isn't really looking for the one-time opportunity for either of them. And I'm thinking, well, you have two great shooters and you're not utilizing them for the one-timer. And that's something that, I mean, maybe it's just something in scheme that they're trying to not make it so telegraphed, because obviously as the other team, you can kind of see when you're setting an opportunity up like that. But with those guys that have two great shots, I don't think, even if you do telegraph it a bit, like I don't think that's going to affect their ability to score goals if they can get the puck on the net. So
Yeah.
I think they just need to utilize both of those two more on the power play, just in terms of the shots that they have, right? That's kind of their big shooters, them or Farabee, and he's not even really being put out there very often.
Well, I guess you could say Atkinson and TK too, but they're not like heavy shooters. They're accurate shooters. I just still don't like the mixes on the power play, and I haven't seen really any adjustment to that. And, ironically, and I'm not going to blame Frost for this, but, ironically, you put Frost in the lineup against Carolina and the offense dries up and only puts up 2 goals a game the past two games. And they were scoring prior to that. Obviously, I don't think that has to do with Frost being in the lineup, but, it's pretty disappointing to see.
Do you think we see like a shakeup in terms of the lines next game?
I don't know. Like they had 20 shots in the third period.
That's the thing, right? Like it's hard. I'm in a place where I'm kind of going back and forth in my head thinking, well, they're not capitalizing, they're not scoring. So why not switch it up and see if you can find a spark there in terms of being able to actually get pucks by the goaltenders here. But as you said, right, they outshot the Sabres 40-15 tonight. They had the majority of the play, or majority of the play in terms of controlling the puck, high danger chances, and they're hanging in with Carolina as well and putting up a lot of shots and probably outplaying them in the third. So it's kind of like, why would you shake that up if they're creating those chances, right? So
yeah, well, you know what we could see? Maybe we see the same lineup but different combinations. Like maybe they put TK with Coots, maybe move Atkinson away, even though, again, I'm not necessarily bashing anyone's play. I think the team has played well. I don't think they played poorly, not poor enough to be on a 3-game losing streak. They could go with the same lines and just kind of power through it. But, you look at TK 5-on-5, you look at Couturier 5-on-5, maybe they try to mix that back in. Atkinson has been playing well also, so maybe you just swap him and TK. I did notice a little bit of line juggling, probably just because the offense was stagnated and not scoring at the end of the game.
Frost and Cates.
Yeah, exactly. I could see that potentially happening. And just trying to change it up, maybe just even swapping Farabee on the left-hand side there, with Forrest or with TK. I'm not sure exactly, but I think they have to explore something. Over the past you got 3 losses in a row. You can't be too married to your lines.
Exactly.
Without it being consistent. And, it's weird because putting Lawton on the 4th line, I think has actually worked really well.
I think they're creating a lot more.
Yeah, they're really driving play. They're creating offense. They had several opportunities to score. Again, Hathaway's a little bit of a finisher. Delorier is not really a finisher at all. But Lawton needs to be the guy there. And I think even the 2-on-0 that he had, like he probably should have shot it. I don't blame him for passing it up. I mean, it's a 2-on-0. But at that time, you were the best player on that line, and I love to, I always want to see the best player on the line take the shot.
You read my mind.
Yeah,
to be honest, I was thinking the same thing. Like when he had that 2-on-0, that he definitely should have shot. I think he telegraphed the sense that he was going to go across to Hathaway there, and Pekka Luukkonen played it perfectly. Stays deep in his net. Doesn't have to push off as far across as they were saying on the broadcast. But Lawton, I mean, he's made the 4th line look a lot more dangerous offensively. I do think we've said that in the past, and you even mentioned that, right? When you have Lawton on the 4th line, who's typically a 3rd line player,
right?
He usually ends up in being one of the most competitive 4th lines in the league in terms of just being able to create and dominate the other 4th line. So I think it's a benefit for the Flyers there.
And they really did. I mean, I don't really have much to bash them on. Like it's almost like this was kind of a game where everything was going wrong. The other goaltender playing really well. Your starting goaltender gets injured early. Ersan, again, I think he made some good saves, but the goals that he gave up were, like you said, odd man rushes. It's just kind of a frustrating game. And it's important to remember it's a long season. and that people might want to bash the Flyers for losing 3 games in a row. But there's a lot of good to take out from here. I don't see Tortorella going to his team and laying into them after this type of loss. I mean, you wanted a different start, but they also were down 2-1, tied the game at 2-2. It's a brand new game, and they just weren't able to score really beyond that. Like, I thought Nick Seeler played well. Sanheim, like you said, played really well. Zamula played okay. It wasn't his best game, but
I thought Walker was noticeable.
Yeah, Walker's looked good in every game. I mean, let's be honest. He's exceeded expectations.
He's a good puck mover.
He played almost 21 minutes a night. I just can't help but think, man, we miss Risto. I think Stahl obviously is missed, but those are our 2 biggest defensemen, and they're both out of the lineup.
I think late in games for sure, and giving up goals against, that's really where you miss Ristolainen.
Yep.
Just the physicality, like he's a big body out there. He clogs up a lot of ice just, with his presence in general. I think having him out there also just has the other teams maybe second guessing, okay, like, am I going to make this blind pass, or am I going to get, hit really hard if I do something like this or try this type of play? Whereas having him not in the lineup, it is true. We look at that back end, and other than Nick Seeler, like, it's really not physical whatsoever, right?
Yeah, and I think, I said this on Twitter, playing physical allows your talent to play their game.
Yeah.
And I think this team has played physical. I think it's been in their strength. I think it's what they didn't do well to start this game, and then they ramped it up as the game went on. But I really think that this is a team that needs to win with physicality. And when they have those guys in the lineup, and Stahl, he's not like, a bruiser or anything, but he's a big body. He's also strong. He does a lot of the same things.
Clears the front of the net, things like that.
These are things we really need.
Like that second goal, right? Let's say you have Ristolainen or Stahl there to try to clear Bureau out of the front of the net. Like, instead of it being Cam Atkinson in that situation, right? Like, that's what you would want to see optimally. But I think they definitely missed those.
I think it's a great point. I'm sorry to cut you off. I think that you nailed it on that one. It's those little plays that the Flyers were doing really well to start the season, and now they're not always working out. And again, too many backbreaking goals, too many odd man rushes. All that needs to be cleaned up, but the power play needs to be adjusted. I don't think they should panic on the power play or anything like that and completely replace everybody, but I think the mix needs to change. It hasn't been good enough games. It's shown some promise, and I get why they want Brink and Atkinson and TK and Couturier on that top unit, and even Sanheim. Like, I get that. You're like, okay, those are our most offensive players, but I really don't understand why Tippett is not out there for that top power play unit, why it's not mixed up a little bit better. And I do want to talk about Frost a little bit. So he came in for Ryan Poehling. And Poehling, I thought that was the right move, actually, because initially I was like, oh, you take out Delory, but Delory outplayed Poehling, and so did Hathaway. So I think they made the right call there, and I don't think it hurts the team as much to have Poehling on the outside. But I will say this about Frost, who I thought had a good game against Carolina, and I thought he had a good game. Again, the guy moves the puck. He's creative as hell. I'm not bashing him. This is not me saying he should come out of the lineup or that he had a bad game, but I do see where Tortorella is frustrated with him, and it's because he plays so much differently than the rest of the guys in this lineup. And if you look up and down the lineup, everybody's extremely physical in the corners. Everybody plays strong on the puck. And I think Frost relies too much on his stick and not enough on being physical. I think he's trying. I'm not going to say he won't get better at that. He's a young player. He can get stronger, and he'll probably break out and put up points, and we'll kind of forget about this. But I do see where Tortorella kind of hesitates with him, because we were playing kind of a defense first, all D down the middle, and we were winning. Now you added some offense, and it's not really manifesting into more offense either. And that's not Frost's fault. But I do, when I watch Frost play, I'm like, man, I just wish you would sometimes throw a big hit, like, go in there and be a little reckless with your body. And I feel like he doesn't do that. And I feel like that's what Tortorella's frustration is really with him, is not so much that he's not trying or he's lazy or he's bad attitude. I don't think it's anything like that. I think he just doesn't play like a lot of the other players on this team, even the undersized ones, even somebody like Bobby Brink, is always in the corners digging. And I feel like Frost is doing, that, but he's doing it more with like a quick stick and then trying to get out of the way, where I think he more wants you to sacrifice your body. And I think that is what this team's strength is. is to play that type of style.
Or checking style, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think we need Frost skills, so I'm not saying that he shouldn't be in the lineup, but I think he just needs to add a little bit of that element to his game. Again, if Claude Giroux was able to do that, being the exact same size or even slightly smaller than Frost, there's no reason Frost can't add that into his game. And I think he just needs to focus a little bit more on that. And that's more of a minor critique, but I do notice that when I'm watching him, I'm kind of like, come on, man, like throw a body. Like, it's okay. Throw your body in there. Like, get more physical, more physically engaged. And it's not just on him, it's on everybody on the team. When they're not physically engaged, they're not playing well.
They're not effective, really.
Yeah, when they're physically engaged, they're playing a lot better hockey. And I think he'll play better hockey if he does that too. And I think Tortorella wouldn't even think about taking him out of the lineup, or, I think that's what he critiques him on. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's the element that got him pulled out of the lineup, is that he doesn't do that as well as any of the forwards on this team. He does other things much better than a lot of the forwards, and you can make the case that, hey, you need that. But the type of game that Tortorella is trying to play, and everybody does it. And, it's a big reason why Andre was sent down. He wasn't able to keep up with the physicality. We'll talk a little bit about Andre here at the end. Anything else you want to mention about tonight's game?
Sure, yeah, just to touch on Frost a bit.
Sure.
I mean, Paling, the swap out for him there, I think that makes total sense. Just in terms of who else could you have really swapped out? Like maybe Delorier, maybe Forster. I think they were hesitant to swap Forster out just because the last few games before they did get Frost in, he was kind of warming up a bit, in the sense that you saw him getting a little more engaged on the forecheck, just getting into those open areas to utilize a shot and get some more chances. Mm-hmm. Even you saw the same of that tonight from Forster, right? Like even Frost himself set Forster up for a couple nice chances, a couple nice one-timer opportunities in the slot, and he's just missing the net, or it's getting deflected. Like you can tell it's more of a confidence issue for Forster right now. Like he's getting to those areas. Yeah. So it makes sense why they left him in there. They want to see him kind of work through that, begin to score here. But in terms of Frost, I do see where you're coming from. And I do understand Tortorella's perspective, in the sense that he doesn't always seem very engaged. I think that's the word, right?
Physically, though.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's engaged, obviously, in terms of the play, like following the puck up ice and everything. But on the forecheck, like you can see that the Flyers are kind of running with a 3-man unit on the offense forecheck, and then even your D-man activate down low to support. And he isn't always in line with his other forwards and kind of contributing in the same way they are on the forecheck. Right. So that's what I'm seeing. But to be the devil's advocate, obviously you really do need his skill set, just in terms of creativity, playmaking ability. That's something this team lacks. I think Bobby Brink's probably the only real true creative playmaker on the team, him and probably Couturier. And obviously I think Brink just has a different skill set in terms of the playmaking versus like what Couturier will bring. And it's the same with Frost. I mean, I think he had a really nice pass below the net against Carolina to Forster. And like you saw, even to Konechny as well, where he made a nice play in that Carolina game. Tonight he had some nice passes and some nice moments as well. But I think he wasn't as noticeable as he was in Carolina. So I think it's just a struggle with Frost on, okay, if he isn't going to be putting up points for you and he's not going to be scoring, and he's not, engaged physically on the forecheck, then, what's the place in the lineup? And I think that's kind of the rock and a hard place that Tortorella finds himself in, because he wants to obviously try to help him develop his game more. Mm-hmm. But if you're getting all these opportunities and you're still not showing it, like when is it going to come out, right? That engagement in terms of the phicality. So
yeah, and he did have 2 hits tonight. They played him just under 17 minutes. He 50% on the faceoff dot. He was even on the plus minus tonight. Yeah. So again, I am not saying Frost had
played
a bad
decent. Yeah,
he did not have a bad game. And again, if he would have set up some of those plays and the puck would end up in the back of the net, we might be having a different conversation. But it's just a problem that when his plays don't produce the offense at the end of the night, you kind of look at his defensive game, right? That's kind of what they're doing. And his defense game wasn't even bad. That's the thing. I think we're overly critical of him right now, but I think it's more we're trying to dissect why he's the odd man out. Right, yeah, exactly. Was the odd man
and
out.
I don't expect him to be the odd man out going forward. Like
I don't think so either.
I think he's going to
stay. He deserves it.
No, exactly. I think he's been one of the better players their last two games. Like if you look at it
Hmm.
just in terms of creating some chances, like I said, he set Forrester up tonight for some good grade A opportunities. He just missed the nets. There's nothing Frost can do on those ones, right? Where
Right.
you're setting up a shooter and they're not able to even get the shot on net in that situation. For him, really, I think it's just about getting the groove and into the rhythm offensively. Like I think
He
once
missed a
the
bunch of
point,
games too.
yeah,
Right.
once the points start to come, once he's kind of in more of a chemistry with his line mates, because even him starting out
TK
with
and Forster.
TK and Forster, like, or I mean, yeah, or in the past, obviously, like they switched him and Cates, right? So I mean, you're switching the lines up, so he does have to get adjusted in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they try something new. Maybe it's worth trying Frost with Atkinson and
Yeah,
moving TK with Tippett and Couturier. Maybe they'll try something new in general. I think they probably will. Again, Couturier is not, he also didn't light the lamp today. I wouldn't say it was his best game. He didn't play
no,
poorly. It's hard. It's hard to criticize them when they outshoot their opponent 40-15.
yeah,
And they have played good hockey. So I think we're being a little overly critical, but we're trying to dissect of what do we do moving forward because they have to change something most likely. If they don't, they'll be like, okay, it'll be by reviewing the footage. Again, we didn't get to review the game or anything like that. Really, we just came right in from here. But you do look to do stuff. I mean, Owen Tippett had 6 shots on net, 3 hits, and then he ends up being a -2 tonight.
yeah.
Um, you know, Again, they're playing him on the top line, but I would like to see him on the top power play. I mean, again, I still want to see a mix up of this power play. Got to get the power play going. I don't
Utilize the
think,
shot.
yeah, I don't think they're going to be a top 10 power play in the league, but they can be in that 15 to 20 range. They did kind of sit around there. I think they were at 21 at their best, and now they're probably have fallen again. To my guess is like the 25 to 30 range. And they really just can't afford to do that. They need to be a team that scores 20% on the power play on a regular basis or more. And they're really not doing that. And it's hurting the team. They can't just rely on the PK. They need both the power play and the PK to be strong if they want to be a bubble playoff team. I'm sure a lot of people are going to jump to say, "Oh, this team stinks" or whatever. But you can't really say that because outside of the Ottawa game, they've played well in every game.
It's a complete turnaround just in terms of like a comparison of how they started last season versus this season.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought it up on last week's episode too. But you're seeing that even more now, where they're out playing teams, out shooting them. Whereas last season it was the complete opposite. Opposite. They were getting hemmed in the defensive zone, getting outshot. It's really Carter Hart bailing them out. So the process this time and to start the season is there. Tenfold versus what it was last season. So I think you want them to keep playing in this way, obviously, right? Like they're doing the right things. I think it's just a sense that they're having difficulty scoring right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what do we think about the past 10 games? We mentioned it already. What are our thoughts like on the past 10 games, right? Like, do we think that this team is where we thought they would be? I would say at least for me, yes. I thought they would get more points out of it. If you look at these games, they left points on the table in a lot of them. They had
Vegas,
opportunity.
Carolina
Yeah.
specifically.
I'm not that concerned that they're at 500 right now. Like that's not the
What are they,
biggest.
4 or 5 and 1 now?
Yeah, I think that is it 4-5-1 yeah, it might be. Yeah, so they're below 500 now. I don't think that's how they played. I don't think it's a good reflection of that, but I do think process wise and what they're doing well, that is kind of what I expected. I think things have bounced the wrong way for them, but again, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and I do think that they've been prepared, but they've also, some of their slow starts lately not characteristic. Some of their decision making to kind of leave a man hanging in an odd man rush, and you brought it up several times. Got to limit those, right? Like we don't have to play absolutely perfect, but we can't be giving those up all game long. It will consistently set this team back. So, what do
Yeah.
you think about the first 10 games?
I think if you look at the first 10 games and just the way the Flyers are playing in terms of creating scoring opportunities, high danger chances, they're doing, a really good job in that area. I think we look at it, and even though they've had trouble scoring for the past two games here, where they've only getting 2 goals in back-to-back games, they do look like a team that seems like it has more offensive firepower just throughout all four lines,
Hmm.
even despite the fact that they can't break the hump on 2 goals in the Buffalo game. But yeah, they just look like a team that is different in the sense of transitions. Like, I think they're a lot quicker this year. They look like they're faster. They're playing a bit faster. They're quicker in terms of moving the puck, letting the puck do the work for them. I think there's less like one player trying to make a play, trying to carry the puck, and it's more of a 5-man unit that you're seeing the team play as, and that's offensively and defensively. So I think it's all good things and habits that you'd like to see them continue. Obviously, the caveat is, they're under 500. There's some things that they need to clean up, and that would be kind of what you mentioned. I think just right now, I think it's definitely safe to say the slow starts are becoming a bit of a trend. I mean, you
Yeah.
got a slow start against Ottawa. That's obviously the second game in, but then you have 3 slow starts consecutively against Anaheim, Carolina, and then Buffalo here. So you can look at it and say, well, sure, they end up playing a lot better in the second half of the first and carrying play throughout the second and the third. Not in the Anaheim game, but in Carolina and Buffalo. But let's say you don't have those slow starts. Maybe the games turn out differently, right? You never know what's going to happen. So maybe that's something that they look to kind of change. I think that's definitely something Tortorella is going to want to address, because it's, I think, something that comes to fruition with preparedness. Like, why aren't you starting off quicker, right? You should be more prepared to start at a
They even
faster pace
scored
here.
first, which is
Yeah,
funny.
I know, which is funny, but he scored
They
first,
didn't
but
play
then
well. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so the first 10 games, I don't think you can really complain if you look at the process at all.
Sure.
Uh, I definitely think that most people probably didn't expect to see them play this well in terms of just puck possession, controlling the play. I think
Absolutely.
other than probably the Ottawa game and the Anaheim game, I think they've pretty much controlled play in all the rest of them.
Yeah.
So that's, only 2 out of 8 where they're really not at their best and not controlling play for large stretches. So for a Flyers team, you have to look at it this way. If they keep playing in this way, in this manner, eventually the
They will
tide will
find.
turn,
I
and
agree.
and they'll find a lot more way to wins, or a lot more ways to win here. I think it just
Well said.
is frustration now that you have to deal with, right? Because it is a young team. They do have their veterans in the locker room, but I think it's just ensuring that you don't see players starting to cheat for offense, or
Right. Absolutely.
playing in certain ways where they're kind of straying from the system, straying from the team 5-man unit mentality, and then they end up turning this losing streak into bad habits, and they kind of spirals, right? That's what you
Yeah.
don't want. So I think that's probably where the coaching staff needs to come in and almost act like a positive reinforcement, similar to what Tortorella said in the Carolina post game, where you want to probably, even though they're not winning here, you want to kind of say, well, if we keep doing this, like doing things this way, keep playing in this manner, we're going to win more often than we lose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that was really well said. I don't even really have much to add there to what you said, because I think 100%. Just keep with the process. Don't get don't get rattled by not. Again, even when they were winning, Tortorella said, "Hey, we're going to lose 3, 4 in a row here,
How
and
do
I
we
want to see how.
respond?
Yeah, I want to see how we respond." And I think it's showing up and doing it again, playing again like you played against Buffalo. The next goalie won't be red hot. Ersan will get his game together, right? And we'll talk about Sandstrom, but we'll see how long Frost Hart is out for, right? We don't even know if it's a substantial injury. It seems like maybe it's a groin or something like that. We don't really know.
Looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a few games, could be a long term. We don't really know. But this is why we wanted to have 3 goalies around, and why you don't throw anybody away, which is something I've said over and over again. You have a quote here from Torts on the team's play over the past 10 games. You want to read that out?
Yeah, sure. Let me just find
Sure.
it here.
Yeah, take your
Um,
time. And no, but overall, I completely agree with everything you said. There's a lot of good stuff to take away from this. Again, you got rookies, you got a defense that's missing 2 of its veterans. You have an AHL player in Belpedio who's played really well at time. I think today was probably his weakest game, but he also hasn't been an
I
issue with the team
wonder,
either.
just before I get into the Torts quote there, I wonder if they get Mete in just due to the lack of offense, right? He is an offensive defenseman, so
They might, but I think the reason they would go Belpedio is because he's right-handed,
Yeah,
and
fair enough.
they have that mix. But you might be right. They could, you don't want Mete sitting for too long, right?
Yeah, exactly. So just to go into the Tortorella quote, this is from after the game against Carolina. He said, "I'm not going to stand up here all year long and talk about moral victories, but I've got to goddamn remember where we are as far as where we are in the organization and the process that we're at. I'm certainly not going to boo the team. I'm going to try to help them." So I think that kind of almost piggybacks the sentiments that we had when we were talking about the first 10 games, where, the team is playing well. It's a young team. If you asked Tortorella probably before the season if the team was going to be playing in this manner, controlling play for majority of their games, out shooting opponents, he probably would have taken that, right? So
Right.
I think if you look at it this way, you can't, there are mistakes to look at and things to clean up. But I think it's more learning opportunities in a sense of how do we close a game out? Because I think that's what's really been plaguing them here
Yeah.
is they've had a lot of trouble closing games out, and that's typically characteristic of young teams at
Yeah.
points, right?
Absolutely. Well said.
So they're having troubles there. I think it's more just as we said, and Tortorella obviously shares the same thoughts where it's instead of getting on the team's back and kind of pointing out the flaws, it's more okay. Here's what we can correct, but we need to keep doing what we're doing in terms of transitioning the puck up ice. Being heavy on the forecheck, playing as a 5-man unit. I think those are all things that you would want to change at all, and
Yeah.
despite the losses. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go to our next topic, I just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Again, a humongous help to us. Please follow us on iTunes and Spotify. Okay. I do have a stat here. We're talking about 10 games. Though this is slightly different now, but this is a shout out to Alexander Appleyard for compiling this and putting it on Twitter. TK in his last, let's say, 101 games now. He has 47 goals and 47 assists. That's 94 points in his last 101 games. I think, honestly, he's been even better than that of late, especially this season. But it is, kind of showing people that it's not just temporary that he's been doing this. And I think he still has more to go. He's still just 26 years old. And I think he's really just hitting his prime now. And again, for those who think that the prime age is below that age, I don't see that reflected with majority of players in the league. So I think it's just really good to see and good to see that compiled. And, he could have had a couple goals tonight. Maybe should have. Again, one of those frustrating games. And I think he's going to continue to produce.
Yeah, I definitely think Konechny looks like the Flyers' best offensive player, and that's even from last season as well.
Yep.
Obviously, you look at the point total there, and it's easy to say, well, hey, this is, a first-line player. I think the real difference in Konechny's game is from, prior seasons where you kind of wanted to see him take the next step was he was never the driver of his line and the guy that was looked to create the offense and be kind of the main producer. Whereas now, the coaching staff, obviously, and this is even Tortorella taking over last season, they have no qualms, putting Konechny on a line, for example, early in the season with Cates and Brink. Or no, it wasn't Cates and Brink. It's fair. Sorry, I don't know why it's escaping me right now.
Forster.
But yeah, Forster there. And but either way, right? So Konechny, he just has the ability to drive his own line, and he's kind of shown that here. And I do wonder though, right? Like you have him and Couturier in the past who've shown great chemistry. They're having kind of trouble scoring.
Yeah.
Are they gonna put those two back together here, right?
It might be the move, right? Not enough scoring, I guess, of late. So maybe it's something they revert back to. Maybe they make just a simple swap in the middle six. I don't know yet. We'll see, because the top line has played well for the Flyers, right?
Yeah.
And we still have Tippett playing on the off wing, right? You have TK playing on his off wing. So all those things are open to experimentation. And I think we'll see a lot more of that as the season goes on. I said in the beginning, do not get too married to lines in the beginning. And I still don't like the fact that they treated the opening night lineup as, some kind of big thing. And I think the Flyers kind of made mistakes there with both Andre and calling up Ersan. I think we see that. And, I called that out early. We were talking about it in the before the season started. I think both guys should have started in the minors. And right now with his injury to Hart, like you really could have had Sandstrom playing these same games, had a similar, if not even better performance just because he's more of a veteran player. And, at a certain point, now you bring up Ersan, hopefully with a lot more ice time behind him. But I do want to bring up another stat here about Couturier, and I had this tweet up, and maybe others have seen it. And this is a shout out to Mike Kelly. His tweet: Sean Couturier is very much back, second on the Flyers in points with 8 in 9 games, now 8 points in 10 games. But puck battle wins in 2023-24. Sean Couturier leads the pack. I don't know what it is after this game, but he was at 47, with John Tavares at 38, with Joel Eriksson Ek and Leon Draisaitl tied for second with 38, and then Sean Monahan at 35. So right there, we're seeing the effects of Sean Couturier. Again, he clearly has stabilized the team. The way we're watching them lose is not them getting outplayed. They might have been outscored tonight, but I don't think the Buffalo Sabres are going to be happy with the way they played. They're going to be happy they walked away with a win. They're not going to be upset about that. I don't think they're going to, but if you look at the way they played and anybody watching that game, you would say the Flyers are the better team. They just kind of ran into a hot goalie.
Got unlucky.
And I think Buffalo's a good team. Like, I don't,
yeah.
I just think they were outplayed. They're outplayed, but they ended up on top, and their score scored when it needed to happen. They were opportunistic tonight, but Sean Couturier leading the pack with how this team was playing, especially in the beginning of the year, which was a lot of takeaways from down the middle, a lot of defensive play. And it's when they were playing their best is when they were playing their best defense. And that's what I think is the biggest takeaway here, is that Sean Couturier leads this team defensively. Him and Sanheim are both carrying that weight right now. A lot of the other guys below them are younger. Scott Lawton has done a good job defensively, a lot of good team defense. And I think it's really what we need to focus on. And even if Sean Couturier is not on the scoreboard, he's always a big impact.
Yeah, exactly. I just wrote an article for Flyers Nitty Gritty, kind of getting into this topic exactly, just how he's still an impact player after, missing such a extended period of time. And we still have to remember, right? Like, it's 10 games in, sure. But this guy before this, hasn't played a game in 646 days. Yeah, so I don't think he's still up to speed in terms of what we can expect going forward. Like, I still think there's a level of rust. And I think that's more on the offensive side. Like, I think defensively, you're kind of seeing him do all the things that you remembered, from what makes him so successful and so effective on the ice. Like, obviously, that puck battle stat is a great indicator, right? Just those little things, the important battles in the game, he's usually coming out on top and winning. And that's something the team, frankly, missed last season, right? Like, think about all those, times where, they got out muscled in a corner, were unable to, win the puck, and then it turns around and ends up in the back of their net. With Couturier, you obviously have another kind of stabilizing factor there, where more often than not, when he's in that one-on-one battle, just his instincts, his smarts, the way he positions himself, like, he's going to end up getting that puck for you. And then who knows what you're going to do for it in terms of creation from that point, right?
Yeah, and I want to see him shoot a little bit more. He had no shots on net today, which is a little surprising. He did win 65% of his draws, and I think this is the only game he didn't lead all forwards in ice time. I think it makes sense considering that they didn't score enough, and TK led the team with, and he had 5 shots tonight. Go ahead.
We are talking too about, like, breaking up lines, but something I mentioned in the article is that in terms of expected goals percentage, so just for everybody, expected goals percentage, that would be the percent of all expected goals that the player's team gets while the player's on the ice compared to the other team. So just for expected goals percentage, Couturier, Tippett, Atkinson line, that's 17th in the league amongst all forward lines that have played a minimum of 30 minutes together. So 17th in the league, and then their percentage is 63.9%. So it just shows, like, we're saying, break the lines up, maybe switch it up, but they've been one of the most effective lines in the league. So, if you just look at the underlying metrics, like, we are saying, you want to see more goals, but maybe if they just stick with this and they kind of get through this rough stretch and they rebound and respond positively. So I think that's probably what Tortorella and the staff are looking for here.
I think that's a great point. They might go with the exact same lineup and just be like, it was tough luck. You know what I mean? We ran into a hot goalie. Let's not panic the team by changing up the lines and pretending like there's something more wrong than there is. Outside of the Anaheim game, I mean, the game they played against Carolina is nothing to be ashamed about. And again, a game where they outplayed their opponent in the
But
third
yeah,
period and just didn't come up with a win.
it's just crazy when you think about it, right? We saw projections before the year began here that Couture's going to slot in on the third line, and it's going to take him.
I laughed at
It's
that
going
when
to
we
take
saw it.
him 30 games to get back to himself, and he started off here, leading the league in puck battle wins. Part of one of the best lines in hockey in the top 20 in terms of expected goals percentage, and 8 points in 10 games for a guy that hasn't played in 646 days. So it just shows the impact that he can have,
He's elite.
right? Yeah, man, he's a first line center in this league, and I mean anybody that says otherwise, I just think they're not watching the games, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, I totally agree. And I think we're gonna have some of these throughout the season. Again, when I see the Flyers improve, again, we're not jumping here to being Stanley Cup contenders. We're talking about being a playoff possibility,
On the
right?
bubble, right?
Yeah, where they could have been last year, barring injuries, they probably wouldn't have finished the seventh worst record in the league. We got lucky and got Mitchkov, right? So let's just take that luck and then build on it now and clearly see that this team is not a bottom of the league team and they probably will win some games here now. And I would imagine they actually beat the Sabres in the next game that they take them on Friday, because I mean, they're going to have something to prove, and there's no way that their goalie's going to be hot again against the Flyers.
And
So
I'm wondering, Yariv, maybe if I'm just like a bad luck charm here for the Flyers in the sense, because every game that I go to and cover so far, they've lost actually. So I've yet to be in the building and cover a game when they win here. So hopefully, Friday when I'm in Buffalo covering the game here for the site, they bounce back here and get the win. But
don't
we'll
you
see.
ruin it, dude. Don't,
It's all me. It's all me, guys.
no, I don't think it's related, but it's funny to think about. So I do want to talk about Sandstrom a little bit. So for those who are unaware, Sandstrom was sent down to the AHL on a conditioning stint, barring the situation with Hart, even though I assume even regardless, even if it's a minor injury, they'll probably sit him out anyway, just because it's a long season and what's the point of rushing anything? I don't want to assume that it's a long-term injury with him at all. But Sandstrom did play tonight. He was sent down to the minors on a conditioning stint. But again, it's like what I was saying earlier. It frustrates me to see this, that they sent down Sandstrom on a conditioning stint, because overall, like really, he should have been the backup to start this year. It didn't make sense to carry three goalies. It didn't make sense to keep him on the bench. He didn't play poorly last year. And I got really frustrated when I saw, Tortorella giving Ersan the benefit of the doubt and saying, hey, this guy, he hasn't played a lot. He's got to learn to play a backup role. That's what Sandstrom had to do. Sandstrom
did not get any of that benefit.
Got none of that leeway. He actually improved his game significantly from the first half of his showings to the second half, and then got no benefit of the doubt there. And now they find themselves in a position where neither goalie has played enough, and that kind of sucks. And this is one of those things I talk about where the coach should not be controlling the lineup like that. The GM needs to, and I think that Briere should have made that call. Be like, well, we'll just call Ersan when it's time. And they wanted to make him make the team. And I'm not in the locker room. I get it. Maybe he would have been disappointed, but how does Sandstrom feel? I just don't get it. I think it was just overzealous. And even with Andre, right? Like, he could have been playing in the minors, doing potentially well, and instead like went up to the NHL, struggled, and then now we have injuries, and he could, he's not playing anyway, where it wasn't even necessary to do that. Like, he didn't play that much pro hockey here in North America. It just wasn't necessary. And I feel like both of those overzealous moves have not paid off for the team. And, I heard people talking about, they need to be on the team to start the season. No, they didn't. That was nonsense. And if you think you're trying to send a message to the fans, the fans care about winning. At the end of the day, that's what's important. It's about winning and the players in the long term. It's an 82 game season. If Andre came up at the 10-game mark, who, by the way, right now Emil Andre is injured, now he's not playing again, and he didn't get the experience in the AHL that we wanted, right? So, I'm sure he'll be back. I'm sure it's not the end of the world, but it's one of those things where it's almost like, of course it happened because we didn't play it right? And like I said, now you have two goaltenders who haven't played that much this season. So at least Ersan got playing time today against. He didn't play terribly, but he doesn't look like Ersan of last season so far, and it's expected because he had a lot of playing time coming into the Flyers season last year, and he was a lot fresher. A lot fresher is the wrong word, a lot more seasoned than Sandstrom was during the season. So, I take all that into consideration. I assume Sandstrom will get called up. I assume Andre will be back relatively soon. But it's one of those things that kind of frustrates me now in retrospect.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Sandstrom Urson situation, it's a tricky one. I think obviously they want to reward Urson for his play last season and his strong play in the preseason. But I think you have to look at what you're
Sandstrom
projecting.
didn't. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Sandstrom didn't play poorly in the
Well, yeah,
preseason either.
I was gonna get to that.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
no worries. So I wanted to mention that they wanted to reward him. Obviously, Tortorella likes Urson more than Sandstrom. I think it's clear that we can kind of see that here, and I think it's just the overall projection of skill set, right? Like I think they project Urson to be a number one or potentially a number one in this league, where I don't think they have the same thoughts on Sandstrom. So I think that's where maybe the disconnect comes. But I do think, and we mentioned it, that Sandstrom played really well actually in the preseason. In the periods that he came in, he held his own.
They
He
barely played him too.
Yeah, exactly. He made some strong saves in limited action. But I think what really it comes down to for me and how I would have handled it is if you're projecting Urson to be a number one, like how are you doing him like the right service here by not playing him number 1 minutes essentially, right? Like you need to have him actually get starts, get reps,
Yes.
develop his game. Him sitting on the bench as much as he has been isn't really doing that for him, and he's still 24, so for a goalie that's very young. And even if you look at Sandstrom, he's only 26, which is also young for a goalie here, and he's not even getting any reps whatsoever.
Yes.
He's the third man, and maybe like in practice getting a couple of shots here and there, but like he's even rotating in practice. So like it's just a tough situation all around for both of these guys. And now you have a situation where both guys probably aren't to the standard that they want to be in terms of sharpness, readiness,
exactly,
all those factors. And you're going to have to utilize them both here because you're playing Buffalo on Friday and the Kings on Saturday in a back-to-back. And I would imagine Hart isn't going to find himself in either of those games unless this is just like solely precautionary. And Hart said, I felt like I kind of tweaked something. Like
it could be. I mean, that could be the case too.
Who knows, right? Like we'll have to wait and see and kind of find out tomorrow or the day after when kind of more news is released on that. But I would expect they're probably going to be cautious with him in the sense that maybe you don't see him until maybe you don't see Hart until Tuesday against San Jose or even the next Friday here against Anaheim on the West Coast.
They could play Ersson back to back, even
possible. Yeah,
it's definitely possible.
It's not like he's played much, so
yeah. And I mean, Sandstrom was in Hershey tonight, so it's not like he's far. So I mean, they can travel him over and they can play him in the game on Saturday against the Kings, right, in a back-to-back situation. So again, none of this is the end of the world. I just hope it's a little bit of a lesson learned for Danny Briere, and sometimes why you need to make the call. And go ahead.
Definitely. And I just think for development purposes, like if you are projecting Urson to be your number one, it's only going to benefit him to play every night and be in Lehigh. Like I personally think he should have started there and they should have had Sandstrom be the backup because I don't think personally he's likely in their future plans here anyway. So,
well, but I agree with that. But like he's still in the plan for this season, as we see. And I feel like that's just, I don't know. I just don't feel like it was the wise move. I heard what, reporters and all that were saying, and, I'm not going to call anybody out by name, but when I heard them saying stuff, I'm like, this is nonsense. I was like, that's not the way that they should do it. They should not allow John Tortorella to just put the players who are I know Ersson is the second best goalie in the team. I know he is. Yeah, like I wasn't surprised. Yeah. Like that wasn't, we talked about
him, you're not benefiting him in any way here.
Right. It's like, oh, he has to learn to be a backup. Really? At 24? Like that's when he has to learn to be a backup? We want to turn
him into a backup? Yeah, like I don't know.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it, and it hurt them.
And that's the thing, right? Like we talked about this in the past. Like if it was a 1A, 1B situation where let's say, you're going to give him more games down the line, and maybe now with Hart, tweaking something, maybe they will be more cautious and kind of do that. But I think him having the traditional backup role just wasn't a good thing for him to start off here because it just didn't help him in his game and kind of readiness, really.
Yeah, and they know what Carter Hart is. Like Tortorella was never not going with Hart on a very regular basis. He is a star goaltender. He wants to win games. Like that's what bothers me. It's like it's not like you thought the two were close.
Yeah, exactly.
You knew that Hart was the better goalie. You knew that he was going to take
Well,
70% of the games, at
yeah.
least.
Just look at, I mean, you gotta just look at the way Hart's played, right? Like, if you watch him to start off here, I think he's easily been one of the 10 best goalies in the league. And I mean, his stats are pretty solid to start. 915 save percentage and a 250 goals against average.
Yeah.
So I just, Hart, there was never doubt in my mind that Hart was going to be the starter. So why would you put a 24-year-old in that position where he's has to be the backup goalie here?
Yeah. I just don't get it. I don't think it was the wise move. And Tortorella can rationalize as much as he want, but it turns out that we were right. They were wrong. And it's not the way they should have played it. I think they were being overzealous. I get the idea. Like the forwards, I understand. Like having Forrester and Brink up there, though you could make the case that Forrester starting in the AHL wouldn't have been so bad either. Especially because he's younger than Brink, but overall I get that, right? You can mix them in, but we had to bench Frost for 6 games, which wasn't necessary either. It's like I just feel like some of this stuff was made in jest, and it was made with the excitement of these new guys, of these young guys as we're rebuilding. But again, it's a long season and these guys are waiver exempt. You can do whatever you want with them. And I just don't get it. Now, you have guys like even calling up Mete, which I understand, but now he has to pass through waivers again. It's like, why didn't you just call up one of them?
And there's now a chance for more injuries.
Yeah,
and other
and
people to pick them up. So.
The Phantoms are shorthanded now. I don't know. I just feel like some of this is just overzealous stuff, and they need to calm down on that stuff. And again, maybe the wristo injury is worse than we think, and that's why they did it. But again, we haven't heard a word about him. So, all right, let's go into our Phantoms update. So the Phantoms have been kind of spiraling as well. Only in a much worse situation. They lost over the weekend, a 4-0 loss, and then a 4-1 loss, and then they lost again tonight, 4-3 in the game that Sandstrom did play. Emil Andre is injured. They called up Will Wolok from the ECHL, who they sent down. So again, they're shorthanded on the back end. Ronnie Addard is injured as well. But the positive tonight is that they were in the game against Hershey, which is obviously a rival, and J.R. Avon scored his first goal, his first pro goal. So I'm excited about that. But overall, the Phantoms are not doing well, which is a little surprising, just because the names they have on offense. I can understand giving up 4 goals a game, but not scoring either is what's kind of concerning to me. I'm not blaming the coach. I don't know. I haven't even really been able to watch the games, so I'm not going to sit here and rip a team apart that I haven't seen. But it's a little weird to me that they haven't scored, that they weren't producing.
Yeah. I mean, personally, like I said, I same boat as you, right? I haven't watched the games. I'm kind of seeing the stats from afar, seeing the results from afar. So we don't want to rip into the team too much, or go through some sentiments I've seen online that LaPerriere has to be let go. It's very early in the season for that. I think you got to give a team a chance to rebound and turn around. Everybody has bad stretches. This could be potentially their worst stretch of the season, and then they end up turning it around. It happens for certain teams at different points all throughout a year, right? So who knows what's going to go on? I just think the depth that they have, it's surprising to me. And we didn't expect Wade Allison to be down there. We didn't expect Tanner Lazinski to potentially be down there. And that's 2 guys that probably, should be top line assets for them. And I mean, Allison's been playing a little better as of late. Lazinski has played well, but it's just surprising based on, I think, the forward depth that they have. And even the defensive depth, though, they were missing Addard and Andre tonight. So I'm sure that's going to hurt them, because those are probably their 2 best defensemen, really.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. I mean, if you look at it and you're giving up 4 goals a game, I don't know what the breakdowns have looked like, but I've seen the stats for Cal Peterson, and they have not looked good. So I wonder, if the goaltending's a factor, and that's maybe why they want to get Sandstrom down there for the conditioning stint, because they realize that. And maybe the team can kind of rally behind more momentum saves that Pedersen hasn't been able to provide. Who knows?
Yeah, well, Gahagan, the 5th string, he's had better numbers than Pedersen for sure. Tonight, Sandstrom gave up, has a 3.90 goals against average.
But first game in how long?
Right. And again, the issue with doing this is that
he literally hasn't played since late September.
Yeah, good thing he actually got to play in this game because we might need him now. But then there's other things like Zayd Wisdom has no points in 6 games. He's a -1. Brandon Fury has only played 3 games. I'm surprised about that. He's a -1. Andre played in 2 games. He was a -3 in those 2 games with no points. Adam Brooks, I think I would assume he's injured because he only has 1 game played, which that's a big loss. I mean, Helge Grans has 1 assist. He is a +1, but not producing much. Rhett Gardner has 1 goal. Ethan Sanson has 1 assist. Again, he's a rookie. J.R. Avon got his first goal in 4 games. Smolak had an assist tonight, so good for him. Allison, now 2 assists in the last 2 games, so he's actually been improving his game, so I'm glad to hear that. Gendron is not playing that much. He's only played 4 games. He has 2 goals in those 4 games.
I think they should play him more, in my
Yeah,
opinion, just based off of that. And
Yeah.
if the team's losing, so.
Yeah, Tuamala has 4 points in 8 games, so he's kind of slowed down a little bit, but so is the offense. Same with Elliot Denoye. He got 1 goal and 3 assists in 8 games. That's surprising. Adam Yinning had a goal tonight. He's got 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists. He's a -4, and so is Ronnie Attard. So that pairing has not been as solid as they were in the past yet. Garrett Wilson's played all right, typical. Marudi had a goal tonight. He's got 6 points in 8 games, so he's doing his thing.
Probably their best offensive player to start.
Well, Tanner Lazinski, he's got 8 points in 6
okay.
games. He's doing his thing. I mean, Tanner Lazinski is one of the best AHL players in the league, so I'm glad he's down there to kind of stabilize stuff. And then Ali Lickshell's got 6 goals in 8 games, so it's not that everybody's playing terribly, but they're not producing offensively. And it's, it sucks to see Zayd Wisdom with 0 points.
Especially after such a strong preseason.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised too. And I don't even see Matt Brown on here on the stats. Like, what happened to him?
Yeah, right.
Did they send him down to the ECHL? Well. I assume they did.
In that case, yeah.
That's surprising because he looks so good. And I'm not saying LePerriere should be fired, but I do see this stuff and I'm like, this is concerning. There's too
questionable
much
for sure.
There's too much talent down there for them not to be producing. I do think he will get them out of it. It's similar problems in the past where they just didn't start off well as a team and had to kind of battle back. So I'm not pulling the fire button or anything like that, but it is disappointing to see. And we'll have to see them rebound. All right, let's go into our prospect updates and then we'll end on that. So first prospect update, just Massimo Rizzo has been named I guess last week now, the NCHC Forward of the Week. He was absolutely dominant, especially early on in the season. In 6 games, he has 14 points, 5 goals, 9 assists. He's still doing it with a +10 rating. Now, remember, he's 22 years old. He's an overager for that league. It's not a reflection of a star player coming, but he is playing for a contract, and it is good to see that the guy is at least doing it to that level. I don't think it guarantees him as a contract because they know his age in comparison is his counterparts, but it does show AHL potential for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably what the Flyers are looking at. They probably acquired him and said, well, if he does really well as an overager, I think that probably might get him, a 2-way deal, potentially, or even just an AHL only contract. Then you move from that point. Who knows what we see? But I think it's more about getting him to the AHL and seeing what he can do there, and then determining based off of that kind of where the career goes. Yep. We do have to caveat, as you said, right? 22 years old. We go back to a lot of different overagers who produced really well at 22 years old and ended up being AHLers, like a Mike Vecchione, for example, right? Which similar kind of boat. So it's good to see Rizzo produce, but I mean, I think you got to see it at the AHL level, obviously, for the Flyers here as well. That's probably what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Next on the list, I mean, we can just do a quick update on everyone, and I can just read out their stats. But let's talk about Gauthier. He is absolutely crushing it in the NCAA right now. He's got 6 goals and 6 assists. 6 goals in 6 games.
Really good.
One assist on top of that and a +3 rating. If you look at all of his goals, they are just lights out. They're goal scorer goals. Again, I do believe when he gets here, he would be walking onto the Flyers. I don't think he's going to be spending, unless it's at the end of the season. I can see him playing with the Phantoms, but I don't see him playing in the minors next year. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but
I don't either.
Yeah, I see him coming right to the NHL. So,
and Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead,
I was
please.
gonna say just look at the physicality, right? Like
Right,
he's a big body
size.
too, all that stuff.
Yeah,
I think for Gautier, like you said, the way he's scoring here, the way he's scoring the goals, like from distance, they're goal scorers goals, and it's just that quick release that you're seeing. Like he's flick of the wrist and he's beating goalies with power from range. And I mean, that's something the Flyers
he's a
have
hell of a
lacked.
shooter,
That's
dude.
something the Flyers have really lacked. That type of release of a wrist shot. Like obviously Tippett and Forshaw are really good, but I haven't seen a wrist shot that good and that quick of a release from a Flyers prospect probably since Jeff Carter. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot of comparisons to Jeff Carter. I don't think he's the exact same type of player,
the
but
shot though,
but very similar. Yeah, at least in the shooting department, he definitely has it. He has that 40 goal projection. And you look at Logan Cooley, who, by the way, Spit and Chicklets had a clip
yeah,
about Cooley where he thought the Flyers were actually going to take him because they were trying to move up in the draft to take him. Obviously, Logan Cooley's a hell of a prospect. I think Cutter Gauthier can be the same level impact,
I
especially in
agree.
his rookie year. They're the same age, and he's coming in a year later. So you look at what Logan Cooley's doing with Arizona. I don't see Cutter Gauthier not playing in the NHL next year. Again, he's going to be a year older, year more physical. He's just super confident type of player. He's two-way. He's responsible. He's kind of got it all. So I expect him to kind of walk into the NHL and I don't know what he's going to have his first year, but a 20 goal year for a rookie year, I don't think is out of his range at all. Um, Whatsoever. I think maybe he can even do more than that, depending on where this team is offensively. Depending on if they do make moves. Everybody's talking about 4 or 5 years in the future. Like all that is nonsense. See where the Flyers finish this year, and then the Flyers adapt to that. If they have to make a trade, they might. Nobody ever thinks of that. Everybody thinks that they're going to be rebuilding for years, right?
Yeah,
At this point, it looks like Pedersen's going to get bought out in the last year of his contract. So,
yeah, definitely.
because he's not going to have, unless he changes his game, he's not going to even have that much value at the AHL level. So, I don't think they're going to want to hold on to him. If that's the case, they're going to want to probably buy him out.
Especially with Kolosov coming over.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. Kolosov's going to come over here. We don't know what's going to happen with Sandstrom. We don't know. Maybe they will hold on to Pedersen. It's possible. You don't want to take a buyout on that, but it's 1 year left, and I think it'll probably be 1.6 million over 2 years, similar to what what's his name?
D'Angelo.
D'Angelo, thank you.
Yeah.
D'Angelo did. So Cutter Gauthier is awesome. And quick update on Matvey Michkov. He had 1 assist earlier today. That puts him at 15 points in 17 games. So he dropped slightly below the point per game range for Sochi. Again, I think the last 3 games he only has 1 assist, but I wouldn't expect that to stay. I think he's
Yeah.
probably due for a goal, and I think he probably will have a big game probably pretty soon. But again, even anything above half a point a game at his age is star level caliber, and he's still way ahead of schedule and still beating out all of his predecessors in Russian hockey. So that's so exciting.
Yeah, he's killing it. Obviously, I have a really great stat that I wanted to bring up
Please,
that kind
yeah,
of gets into that and just the predecessors, as you mentioned. So with the assist today, that would be his 41 or 41st KHL point in total. That's 41 points for him in 62 games played. So that has him as a 0.66 point per game clip. Only 5 players have ever managed to hit 40 points before their age 20 season. And here are the 5 players in the stats. So
and he's
Evgen,
18.
yeah,
Mind
exactly. So Evgeny Kuznetsov, 81 in 128 games. That's a 0.63 points per game pace. Kaprizov at 77 points in 133 games before the age 20 season. So that's 0.58 point per game pace. Tarasenko, 53 points in 122 games. That's a 0.43 point per game pace. And Buchnevich had 50 points in 100 games before his age 20 season in the K for a 0.5 point per game pace. So Mishkov outpaces all those players in the point per game range with 0.66 with 41 in 62 games. So it just shows, how elite he is in terms of producing offense and just that he's a factor at his age in that league where typically an 18-year-old really is not going to be playing. Like look around the league and see how many 18-year-olds are in the KHL. You can probably count them on your hands, right?
Yeah,
So
you're
it
absolutely
just
right.
it just shows that he's a special talent. He just thinks the game at a very high level to be able to play so above his age range here.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just do a quick stats update, I guess, here on some other guys. Ryan McPherson has 18 points in 13 games in the BCHL. That again, that's very good, but is the BCHL. It's, kind of like OHL level type of play, so not that crazy. But I think it might even be below OHL to some
It
degree.
is, yeah.
Yeah. So again, he is dominating there, at least point production wise. Denver Barkey has 16 points in 12 games, continuing his strong run. He's also +8 in that time period. Oliver Bonk still 10 assists in 12 games. He hasn't had a point in a little bit. Still a +3. Who else we got here? Carter Sutherland in the WHL. He's got 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. He's a defenseman, so that's pretty good in the WHL. Point 70 point per game for a defenseman. That's pretty solid. Alex Yernick has slowed down a little bit. He has 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in 12 games for a .58.
But he's also in a men's league, so we got to take that into account.
Absolutely. Good thing to point out there. Bryce Brzezinski, I don't know if he will ever even come to the Flyers at this point, but he's got 3 points in 6 games. Owen McClellan, also 3 points in 6 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, a .5. I think that's honestly, I feel like he can do a little bit better than that. Alex Bump, still just 2 assists in his 4 games for Western Michigan. Not bad, but I think he can do better than that as well. He's a long time away. Who else is important on here? There was somebody else I wanted to point out. This one is bad news. But Cole Knuble, 7 games, 0 points, -3.
Yeah, thought that was weird.
Very, very weird considering he was the top point producer for his team. Again, we haven't had an opportunity to watch him. But no points in 7 games is shocking. I mean, he did play in the U.S. Hockey League last year, different league, but he was a top point producer there. And to just go 7 games without a single point is a little strange.
Yeah.
But maybe this is kind of, he's a Knuble, so maybe it's going to take him a little bit longer, right? His father took longer to break out. It took him longer to break out in the U.S. Hockey League. So,
different level too, right? Like you're moving up to the NCAA. So yeah, exactly. Just maybe adjusting to that pace, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the goaltending wise, and I moved off of this and I wish I didn't.
Actually, wait, I can read that out.
Sure.
So
yeah, you want to
yeah, sure. So I have Igor Zavragin. So he's in the MHL. So it's like the prospect league essentially. For the K here. In 6 games, he's got 1.46 goals against average and a 951 save percentage. So, I mean, he's just insane for those numbers.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
And then yeah, no worries. And then Alexei Kolosov, 15 games played for him, 2.05 goals against average, 918 save percentage. So, I mean, I'd imagine with those numbers, he's one of the top goalies right now in the KHL.
3 shutouts.
Yeah, I was going to mention he also has a couple shutouts in there as well. So he's killing it, and I'm really excited for him to come over next season just to see the skill set. And
absolutely,
he just looks like a really solid goaltender. And Carson Bjarnason, 11 games played, 3.05 goals against average and a 910 save percentage. So you're kind of seeing him up the save percentage here in the last couple of weeks. So that's great to see, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, it's still very exciting with Kolosov coming and Ersan being here and Hart being here. And in fact, we still hold on to Felix Sandstrom and we have Carson Bjarnason who's developing. It's a good place for the Flyers to be. And Zavragin also having very good numbers in his league. So good stuff from a lot of the prospects, but it's still early. Let's give it some more time, and some of these other guys will develop more and break out. It tends to happen where a lot of guys kind of start slow and then speed up, or start fast and then slow down. So we really want to get longer sample size for majority of these players at this point. And like even Cutter Gauthier, I can see his production even going up beyond what it is right now with only 1 assist. But again, he's a goal scorer, so. All right. That's it for us. Just a reminder, please, everybody subscribe. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, Vasili, any updates?
So yeah, just articles coming out for Flyers Nitty Gritty. I will be covering the game in Buffalo on Friday night, so I'll have like a post game and keep an eye out on my Twitter at Flyered Up, and I'll have the usual content I typically have. Like I'll try to get the lineup for you, any lineup changes pre-game, and then like pre-game interview content and then post-game interview content as well. Usually I try to get the videos up there, so keep an eye out for that, everybody. And we appreciate all the support kind of as the season's beginning to ramp up here.
Absolutely. And great job on that Couturier article. Great job on everything, dude. You're killing it. Love it. And it should be fun to see you at the game on Friday. It would be cool. Yeah, and just want to remind everybody, please like, subscribe, share, follow us on iTunes, follow us on Spotify. All that stuff is a humongous help. If you can help support us and just, get our name out there more, you guys are awesome with that. So, and just engaging with us is just awesome. So thank you all so much. You've been an amazing point of support and motivation for us. So we really appreciate it. And now we're fully into Flyers season, and just the Eagles, the Flyers, and the Sixers are playing. Unfortunate news for the Phillies, but it's time for hockey season. It's getting cold out here, and that's what matters. Hockey season. I don't care what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, like we're close to snow where I am, so.
I know I'm complaining about cold, and you're in Canada.
That's okay. We're used to it up here anyway.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you, everybody. We love you. And remember, always stay green.